Welcome back, everybody, for another deep dive. And today we're diving deep into a weapon that's been causing a lot of chatter lately. The Taurus KTPD-350 missile.
Yes, the Taurus.
You've got a whole stack of reports and analyses.
A lot of material on this one.
Even some technical breakdowns to really get into the nuts and bolts of this thing.
Yeah, should be interesting.
So strap in, folks, because this is going to be a wild ride.
Definitely.
Now, this is a German-Swedish creation, shrouded in a bit of secrecy, but it boasts some pretty serious capabilities that are turning heads in the defense world.
Yeah, I mean, it's often called a qualitative edge, and there's a reason for that.
So what is it about this missile that makes it so special? What sets it apart from the crowd?
Well, it's designed to hit targets with pinpoint accuracy from over 500 kilometers away.
Wow, that's
the distance from London to Paris, just to give you an idea.
That's incredible.
So imagine being able to take out a heavily fortified bunker or a command center hidden deep inside a mountain,
Yeah,
all while the launching aircraft stays far out of enemy airspace.
that's pretty remarkable.
That's what the Taurus brings to the table.
So it's a standoff weapon, keeping those valuable aircraft safe and sound.
Absolutely.
It sounds like something straight out of a spy movie, especially when you hear about its stealth capabilities.
Oh, yeah.
Can you tell us a bit more about that? Does it really fly under the radar?
It flies low and quiet, hugging the terrain to evade detection, and the design itself is meant to minimize its radar signature.
Ah, I see.
Makes it incredibly difficult for enemy systems to pick it up.
So it's not invisible,
Not invisible, no.
but pretty darn close.
But it presents a serious challenge to even the most sophisticated air defenses.
So that brings up the question of countermeasures.
Right.
If it's so difficult to detect, how do you even begin to try to stop it?
That's the thing. It's a tough nut to crack.
Oh, I bet.
There are, of course, sophisticated air defense systems out there like the Russian S-400 or the American Patriot,
Yeah, those are top of the line.
which are designed to engage, low-flying cruise missiles. But even these systems aren't guaranteed to stop a Taurus.
No, they're not foolproof.
Not foolproof, no,
Right.
especially given its stealthy nature.
What about those close-range defense systems? You hear about, like, the Pantsir, for example.
Oh, the Panzer, yeah.
Could those take out a Taurus, let's say, in its final approach?
Yeah, I mean, they might be able to intercept it in the last moments, in that terminal phase.
Sort of a last-ditch effort.
Yeah, more of a last-ditch effort than a reliable defense. Their effectiveness is limited by range and reaction time.
It's got to be right place, right time.
You got it.
But the thing is, the Taurus has this incredibly robust navigation system
Yes, this is one of its key features.
that combines 4 independent methods.
Yes. Full?
It's like having a backup for your backup.
Exactly. It's layers upon layers of redundancy.
So even if one system is jammed or compromised,
Which happens. It happens.
it can still navigate with incredible accuracy.
That's the goal. Absolutely.
Now, I'm no missile engineer, so break that down for us a bit.
Okay, sure.
What makes this navigation system so special?
Okay, so think of it this way. The Taurus has like a super sense of direction.
Right.
It's got this inertial navigation system, INS, which works like an internal compass.
Ah, so it knows where it is, even without outside help.
Right. It keeps track of its movements even without external signals. So even if GPS is jammed,
Which, let's face it, is becoming increasingly common these days.
it's a huge factor in modern warfare. Yeah.
The Taurus can still find its way.
Still on target. That's the idea.
That's pretty impressive.
It's a critical feature. Absolutely.
But you mentioned there are other systems at play as well.
Right. It's not just INS.
Of those two.
So it also has this thing called image-based navigation, or IBN, which essentially uses onboard cameras to compare live images with stored maps of the target area.
It's like having eyes. It sees where it's going.
It's like a visual guidance system, helps it stay on course.
Fat.
And then there's terrain reference navigation, or TRN, which uses radar to match the ground below with like these digital maps.
So it's checking the landscape, making sure it's on the right track.
Exactly. And this allows the missile to fly extremely low, hugging the terrain to avoid detection.
So it's staying under the radar, literally.
Literally, yes.
So it's constantly checking its location against all these different sources, making it incredibly difficult to throw off course.
It's a very resilient system.
It's no wonder it's causing such a stir.
It's a game changer, no doubt.
But let's talk about its actual firepower.
Okay, let's get into the nitty-gritty.
How powerful is this missile? And what makes its warhead so unique?
So the Taurus carries a 2-stage warhead,
2 stages, okay.
and it's called Mephisto.
Mephisto, got it.
And it's specifically designed to defeat hardened targets.
So those tough ones, the ones that are built to withstand a lot of punishment.
Exactly. Bunkers, command centers, you name it.
How does it work?
So the first stage is a shaped charge, which blasts an opening in the target's outer defenses.
It's like making a door.
Exactly, creating an entry point.
Wow.
And then a penetrator burrows deep inside before detonating, causing maximum damage from within.
So it's not just about blowing things up. It's about really crippling those heavily fortified targets.
It's about neutralizing those key assets.
But I imagine there are concerns about collateral damage with such a powerful weapon.
Of course, that's always a consideration.
How is that being addressed?
Well, it all comes down to precision.
Okay.
The Taurus relies on its pinpoint accuracy, its intelligent fuse, which can actually analyze the target's structure, and the focused nature of its warhead to minimize collateral damage.
So the idea is to neutralize the intended target while avoiding unnecessary destruction to the surrounding area.
That's the goal, absolutely.
So it's a weapon designed for surgical strikes, not widespread devastation.
You got it. It's about precision and control.
That's a bit reassuring, at least from a purely technical standpoint.
Makes sense.
But let's talk about the elephant in the room, the ongoing conflict in Ukraine.
Right, that's where things get complicated.
The Taurus has been making headlines in that context, and there's a lot of debate about whether Germany should supply these missiles to Ukraine.
It's a very sensitive topic.
What's your take on that?
Look, it's a complex issue with no easy answers.
Yeah, for sure.
On the one hand, Ukraine is facing a brutal invasion, and they need all the help they can get to defend their territory.
They're fighting for their survival.
Absolutely.
On the other hand, supplying long-range missiles like the Taurus raises concerns about escalation.
It's a valid concern.
Some argue that it could be seen as a provocative move, potentially widening the conflict and leading to unintended consequences.
It's a slippery slope, that's for sure.
It sounds like a delicate balancing act, weighing Ukraine's need for self-defense against the risk of further escalating the conflict.
It's a tough call, no doubt.
But purely in terms of capabilities, what impact could the Taurus have on the battlefield in Ukraine?
Well, there's no doubt that the Taurus would be a game changer for Ukraine.
It would significantly enhance their capabilities.
It would give them a whole new set of options.
How so?
Well, its ability to strike high-value targets deep behind enemy lines, combined with its stealth and accuracy, could potentially disrupt Russian logistics, command centers, even air defenses.
It would give them a real edge.
Absolutely. It could provide Ukraine with a much-needed edge in a fight against a much larger and better-equipped adversary.
But you mentioned earlier that even advanced air defense systems might not be able to stop a Taurus.
That's right.
Wouldn't that make it a significant escalation in this conflict?
It's a valid concern, no doubt.
How would Russia likely react?
Well, Russia would likely view the deployment of Taurus missiles as a major escalation, and there's always the risk of retaliation.
So it's a gamble.
It's a high-stakes gamble with potentially far-reaching consequences.
It's not a decision to be taken lightly.
Absolutely not. The decision ultimately rests with Germany, and it involves weighing the potential benefits for Ukraine against the risks of widening the conflict.
So it's not just about military capabilities.
It's about so much more.
It's also about political calculations and the unpredictable dynamics of war.
It's a complex equation.
But let's shift gears for a moment and talk about something I found intriguing in the research. The fact that the Taurus is not just being modernized, but also being adapted for a new ground-launched missile.
Ah, yes, you're talking about the Joint Fire Support Missile, or JFSM.
That's the one.
It's really fascinating. They're taking the key components of the Taurus and adapting them for a ground-launched platform.
So it's like a cousin to the Taurus.
Yeah, you could say that.
But not a direct replacement, right?
No, not a direct replacement. The JFSM is designed to provide long-range precision strikes against enemy defenses, communications, and infrastructure.
So think of it as a complement to the air-launched Taurus, offering different launch options for similar mission sets.
You got it. It adds another layer of flexibility.
So you could have air-launched Taurus missiles taking out key targets from afar, while ground-launched JFSM missiles provide more localized support.
It creates a more versatile and adaptable force.
It sounds like a potent combination, especially given the Taurus's ability to operate without relying on GPX.
You're catching on. It's a force multiplier.
But this new missile is still in development, right?
Correct.
When can we expect to see it in action?
It's still a few years away. The JFSM is expected to enter service sometime around 2028.
2028. Okay, so still some time to go.
But early reports suggest it could be a formidable weapon in its own right.
So we'll have to keep an eye on that development.
Absolutely. It's one to watch.
It'll be interesting to see how it performs in real-world scenarios and how it complements the capabilities of the air-launched Taurus.
I'm really curious to see how it all plays out.
Speaking of the air-launched Taurus, One thing that struck me while going through the research is that despite its impressive capabilities, the U.S. doesn't have anything like it in its arsenal.
That's an interesting observation.
Why is that?
It's a great question, and it really highlights the different priorities and military doctrines of the U.S. and its European allies.
So different needs, different approaches.
Exactly. So first of all, the U.S. already has a formidable arsenal of its own advanced cruise missiles, like the Tomahawk, which is launched from ships and submarines, and the JASSM, which is air-launched, like the Taurus.
They've got their own heavy hitters.
Oh, yeah, some of the best in the world. And these missiles often exceed the Taurus's range and are tailored for the U.S.'s global reach.
So it's not that the U.S. lacks firepower. It's more about having different tools for different jobs.
You got it. Different missions, different requirements.
Makes sense. There are also political and industrial factors at play, right?
Absolutely. The U.S. strongly favors its own defense industry, and they're unlikely to purchase a foreign system like the Taurus, especially when they already have similar or superior options available domestically.
That makes sense. It's not just about the weapon itself, but also about national interests in supporting domestic industries.
It's a big part of the equation for sure.
And don't forget that both Germany and Sweden have strict export controls on the Taurus, limiting its availability to other nations.
Right. It's a strategic asset for them, and they're understandably cautious about sharing this technology.
So it's a combination of strategic priorities, national interests, and technological exclusivity that has kept the Taurus out of the U.S. arsenal.
It's a multifaceted issue, no doubt.
But that doesn't diminish its significance or its potential impact on the global stage.
It's a weapon that demands attention, that's for sure.
This deep dive has been incredibly insightful, and I'm already eager to hear more about the Taurus's specific features and its role in modern warfare.
There's a lot more to uncover.
Well, I'm ready to dive deeper.
Let's do it.
Okay, I'm really curious to hear more about the Taurus's stealth capabilities. You know, the sources mention a low observable design and terrain-hugging flight. Can you unpack those for us?
Yeah, so low observable essentially means it's designed to be stealthy.
Okay.
To minimize its radar signature, make it incredibly difficult for enemy radar to pick it up.
So it's like hiding in plain sight.
In a way, yeah, and this is achieved through a combination of things. You know, its shape, the materials it's made from, and even special coatings that can absorb radar waves.
So it's not just about flying low. It's about being almost invisible to radar, even from a distance.
It's about reducing that radar cross-section as much as possible.
But what about this terrain-hugging flight? Does it really fly that close to the ground?
Oh yeah, it can fly as low as 50 meters, using hills and valleys, even forests as cover to stay hidden.
Wow, that's pretty low.
It is.
And the terrain reference navigation system we talked about earlier, that plays a key role here, right?
Absolutely. It uses radar to map the ground below, allowing the Taurus to follow the contours of the terrain, stay low and out of sight.
That's fascinating. It's almost like it's weaving its way through the landscape to avoid detection.
It's a pretty sophisticated system.
But let's talk about its targeting system. We touched on the four main components, INS, GPS, IBN, and TRN. But how do they work together in practice?
Right. So imagine a Taurus being launched from an aircraft already programmed with the target's location, the desired flight path.
Got it.
Initially, the Inertial Navigation System, or INS, takes the lead.
Okay.
It acts like an internal compass, measuring the missile's acceleration, its rotation, to figure out its position.
So even if everything else fails, the INS can still get it to the general area of the target.
Yeah, it's a self-controlling system, but it's not perfect.
What do you mean?
Well, over time, small errors can accumulate in the INS calculations, leading to a drift in the missile's position.
So it needs a little help to stay on track.
Exactly. That's where the other systems come in.
Okay.
So if GPS is available and not being jammed, it provides updates to correct for any drift.
So it's like a course correction.
You got it. But as we discussed, the Taurus is designed to operate even when GPS is unavailable.
Right, because it can't rely on satellite navigation alone.
Exactly, especially in contested airspace.
That's where those other two systems, the IBN and TRN, become even more important, right?
Yeah. Absolutely. They come into play when GPS is out of the picture.
And what do they do exactly?
Okay, so the image-based navigation, or IBN, uses an onboard camera to take pictures of the ground below.
It's like it's taking snapshots as it flies.
In a way, yeah. And these pictures are compared to a stored database of satellite imagery, allowing the missile to identify landmarks and adjust its course.
So it's like matching what it sees to what it knows?
Precisely. It's a form of visual navigation.
And the TRN, or terrain reference navigation, how does that work?
That one uses radar to scan the ground, essentially creating a detailed map of the terrain.
Okay.
And it compares this to a preloaded digital elevation model.
So it's making sure it's following the right path.
Exactly. It's like checking its elevation against a map to stay on course.
So it's constantly cross-referencing its location against multiple sources, making it incredibly difficult to knock off course.
It's a very resilient system designed to overcome jamming attempts.
It's no wonder it's causing such a stir in defense circles.
It's a game changer for sure.
But how does the missile actually ensure it hits the right target, with that pinpoint accuracy we've been talking about?
Right, so as it gets closer to the target, the IBN switches to a more detailed image database, allowing it to pinpoint specific features of the target itself.
So it's getting more precise as it gets closer.
Exactly. It's not just about hitting the right building, it's about hitting the right section of a bridge, or even a specific floor within a building.
That's incredible.
And that's where the Taurus's intelligent fuse, the PIMPF, comes into play.
Ah, yes, the PIPF, the fuse that can actually analyze the target structure.
That's the one. It adds another layer of precision.
Remind us again how that works.
Okay, so the PIMPF can identify layers and voids within a target.
Okay,
So let's say you need to take out a bunker deep underground.
a hardened target.
Exactly. The PMPF will make sure the warhead detonates at just the right depth to collapse the entire structure.
So it's not just about blowing it up, it's about making sure it's completely neutralized.
It's about achieving the desired effect with maximum efficiency.
It's an incredible level of precision and effectiveness that sets the Taurus apart.
It's a very advanced system.
It sounds like a weapon straight out of science fiction with all this advanced technology packed into one missile.
It's pretty impressive, no doubt.
But let's talk about the human side of this equation. The decision to use a weapon like the Taurus is ultimately a political one.
It always is, in the end.
With real-world consequences.
Absolutely. And in the context of the conflict in Ukraine, that decision becomes even more complex.
Yeah, it's a delicate situation.
It is. Supplying Ukraine with Taurus missiles would undoubtedly have a significant impact on the battlefield.
It could be a game changer for them.
Potentially, yes. It could allow them to strike strategic targets deep behind enemy lines, potentially shift the balance of power in their favor.
But there's also the risk of escalation.
Always. The risk of provoking a response from Russia that could lead to a wider conflict.
It's a dilemma with no easy answers.
That's the reality of war, unfortunately.
On one hand, you have a country fighting for its survival, needing all the support it can get.
And on the other, you have the very real danger of escalating a conflict that could have global ramifications.
It's a tough call, and ultimately it's a political one.
It goes beyond just military considerations. It's about weighing the potential benefits against the potential risks, and those risks are significant.
It's clear that the Taurus is not just a technological marvel. It's a symbol of the complex and often challenging choices we face in a world where technology is constantly pushing the boundaries of warfare.
It forces us to confront those tough questions, those ethical dilemmas that come with such advanced weaponry.
And as we delve deeper into the specifics of the Taurus and its potential applications, it's important to keep these broader questions in mind.
Absolutely, because technology, for all its advancements, is ultimately a tool, and its impact depends on the choices we make as humans.
So true. Now, I'm ready to learn more about the Taurus's two-stage warhead. What exactly makes it so effective against those hardened targets you mentioned earlier?
Okay, let's break it down.
You mentioned the Taurus's warhead is called Mephisto, and it's a two-stage design. What exactly does that mean?
Well, it's specifically designed to take out those really tough targets, like bunkers, command centers, reinforced structures, that sort of
The
thing.
ones that are built to withstand a lot.
Exactly, yeah.
So how does it work? What makes it so effective?
All right, so the first stage is what we call a shaped charge.
Shaped charge, okay.
This creates a super focused jet of molten metal that basically punches a hole right through the target's outer defenses.
So it's not about a huge explosion. It's a very precise,
It's about focus, yeah.
creating an entry point to the main payload.
It's like creating a door right through those thick walls.
It's wild. So what happens next?
Right, so then that main payload, which is a penetrator, think of it as a super hardened projectile, it follows through the hole created by that first stage.
Ah, I see. Using that initial opening to get deep inside.
Exactly, it burrows deep into the target before detonating.
So it's maximizing the damage by exploding from within.
Precisely. It's not just about blowing things up. It's about reaching the heart of the target and causing catastrophic damage from the inside.
Makes sense. It's about making sure the target is completely neutralized.
Exactly. Achieving the desired effect with maximum efficiency.
But with that level of destructive power, isn't there a risk of, unintended consequences? Collateral damage.
It's a valid concern, of course, but the Taurus is designed to minimize that risk.
How so?
Well, you've got the pinpoint accuracy we've talked about, the intelligent fuse that can analyze the target's structure, and the focused nature of the warhead itself.
So everything is working together to really concentrate the impact.
Absolutely. It all works in concert to ensure that the destructive effects are concentrated on the intended target.
So it's not a weapon of indiscriminate destruction.
Not at all.
It's a precision instrument designed to take out specific threats while minimizing harm to the surrounding area.
You got it. It's about surgical strikes, not widespread devastation.
That makes sense. It's not just about firepower. It's about using that firepower intelligently and responsibly.
That's the key takeaway here, for sure.
But let's circle back to the question of why the U.S. doesn't have a missile like the Taurus in its arsenal.
Okay, sure.
Is it simply a case of different priorities, or are there other factors at play?
I mean, it's multifaceted, as we've discussed.
Right, we've touched on some of these points.
The U.S. has its own advanced cruise missiles, like the Tomahawk and the JASSM,
Right, we talked about those.
which are tailored to their global reach and strategic needs.
So it's not that they lack the capability, it's more about different tools for different jobs.
Exactly. Different missions, different requirements. And the Taurus is really designed for a more regional focus, particularly the European theater.
So the U.S. has chosen to invest in systems that align with their global military posture,
Makes sense, right?
while European nations have focused on developing weapons like the Taurus that address their specific security concerns.
Different needs, different solutions.
And we can't forget the political and industrial considerations.
Of course, that's a huge factor.
The U.S. has a strong preference for supporting its own defense industry.
Absolutely. And they're unlikely to purchase a foreign system like the Taurus when they have comparable or even more advanced options available domestically.
Right, so it's a combination of strategic needs, national interests, and technological self-reliance that has shaped the U.S. approach.
You got it. It's about maintaining that edge, both technologically and strategically.
And to be fair to Germany and Sweden, they've got those strict export controls on the Taurus.
Right. It's a strategic asset for them, and they're understandably cautious about who they share this technology with.
So in the end, it's this complex interplay of factors that's kept the Taurus out of the U.S. arsenal.
Multiple layers, multiple considerations.
This deep dive has really opened my eyes to the complexities of military technology.
It's a fascinating field for sure.
You know, the strategic thinking behind weapons development and the ethical considerations that come into play when these weapons are deployed.
It's not just about the technology itself. It's about the implications, the potential consequences, the ethical dilemmas.
Absolutely. And it's crucial to engage with these complexities, especially in an era where technological advancements are rapidly changing the nature of warfare.
Couldn't agree more. We need to be having these conversations.
We need to understand not just the capabilities of these weapons, but also their potential impact on global security and those ethical dilemmas that come with them.
It's about looking at the bigger picture, thinking long-term.
Well said. This has been a fascinating exploration of the Taurus missile.
It's been a pleasure diving deep with you.
And I'm sure our listeners have learned a lot about this powerful and controversial weapon.
I hope so, and I hope it sparked some thoughtful reflection on the broader questions surrounding military technology and its role in our world.
Absolutely. That's what we aim for with these deep dives, to really get people thinking.
To engage with these important topics.
Well, that's all the time we have for this deep dive.
Time flies when you're having fun.
But I want to thank you for sharing your expertise with us. It's been an enlightening conversation.
It's been my pleasure. Always happy to discuss these things.
And to our listeners, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the world of the Taurus KPD-350 missile. Until next time, keep those minds curious and stay engaged.
Stay curious out there.